Hello, Pekan. Thank you so much for joining me today from Michigan. It's always great to catch up with you. Let me formally introduce my guest today, Ken Mathis Lohatepanont. He is an alumnus of UC Berkeley, where he completed his bachelor's in political science in 2020. He is now pursuing a PhD in political science at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, with a particular focus on the political landscape of Southeast Asia, especially Thailand. Pickens' political commentary writing pieces has been featured in many major publications such as The Washington Post, Bangkok Post, and Thai Enquirer, and his work really highlights his depth of understanding in these areas. Thank you again, Ken, for being here. You're someone I truly admire for your passion for this field, and I cannot wait to chat with you about today's topic. So, without further ado, let's get started.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, today we're going to dive into an interesting topic, why Piquen chose to pursue a social science degree in his undergrad years. So, Piquen, the first question, let's start from square one. As a PhD candidate in political science, can you explain a bit to the audience what do you actually study in this field?
That's a great question. So maybe let's take an initial step back, right? What is actually the social sciences and what are the social sciences about? I'm sure that many of your listeners have studied the natural sciences when they were in high school, right? When you study a subject like biology, chemistry, or physics. The social sciences is similar in a way. What both fields share, the natural sciences and the social sciences, is the use of the scientific method, right? Trying to generate theory, create hypotheses, and then test those hypotheses using rigorous, empirical methods. And so that's what they both share in common. But instead of trying to study the natural world, the social sciences is essentially trying to study human societies and social processes. And there are a lot of social science fields, some of the main ones like economics, psychology, sociology, and of course, political science. In political science in the United States, we have four main subfields. We study American politics, we study comparative politics, which is essentially studying the domestic institutions of different countries around the world. We study international relations, which is the interactions between different countries, what leads to war, what leads to peace. And we also study political theory, which is essentially political philosophy. I personally study comparative politics. I focus on a couple of different things. Lately, I've been interested in political parties and the relationship between parties and political institutions in general. I also study the political economy of innovation, and I focus a lot on domestic politics in Thailand.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that explanation. Let's move on to question two. So, Piken, was there a particular experience, perhaps during your high school years or earlier, that shaped your decision to focus on political science specifically? Did you always know that that was a path you wanted to follow?
So yeah, I think that in Thailand, it's a country where you can't really escape politics, right? Even if you don't want to pay attention to politics, politics will find a way to pay attention to you in a way. And I think that one of my first political memories was perhaps I think it was in first or second grade. I remember I woke up getting ready to go to school, and then I was told that, oh, there was a military coup today. So school was canceled. I mean, I didn't know what a coup was back then, but I was pretty happy about it because there was no school. And then ever since then, I became a lot more interested in history. I remember one of my favorite subjects in middle school was humanities and studying, ancient history and all that. But then I came to realize later on that politics is essentially history in action right now, happening right in front of our eyes. And when I was in about ninth grade, that was when Thailand became engulfed in a renewed political crisis. And yeah, I became really interested in trying to understand the cause and effects of politics at that point. And I think that was when I became quite certain that I wanted to study political science.
I see. So was it the fact that you could connect things you were learning in history and then seeing it kind of play out and making that connection that helped you build that interest in this field?
Yeah, it was interesting because in middle school, when I was interested in history, I wasn't all that interested in current events. Like I remember there would be in class sometimes we had these like current events quizzes, and I wouldn't really know what was going on. I wasn't reading the news regularly, I guess. But it was only later in high school that I made the connection that actually, you know, we study history so that it informs our current understanding of politics as well, and that you can't escape politics no matter how much you want to try.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a very key part because, like, for me, speaking from experience, like, in school, of course, we learn so many subjects, right? And, like, I
Yeah.
did really well in all of my courses, but it was just there was something about psychology that I was particularly drawn to, and it was the same thing as you, like, making that connection to the real world, right? Like,
Hmm.
'cause I learned biology and physics and all those stuff, but it was really AP psychology that I was like, "Oh, I can really see what I learned, but, like, in real life." So, that was also a big part of, like, my decision to pursue psychology, and I
Hmm.
think, that's something for high school students to think about, of like, "Okay, what courses am I, um, drawn to, am I attracted to, and for what reasons?" Awesome,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Yeah, let's move on to the third question. Speaking from experience as an admissions consultant, I've had many conversations with high school students about what major they should pursue in college. The most common ones I get are business, computer science, or some sort of engineering, right? Like, rarely do I meet a student who says, like, I want to pursue a social science degree in psychology, sociology, or political science. Um, the closest to social science I'll get from students is econ, which is like somewhat STEM, somewhat social science. Piken, you've built such an impressive academic career in political science, but can you take us back to the start? Like, what initially sparked your interest in pursuing a social science degree when you began your undergrad studies at Berkeley?
Maybe too early to say my political science career is impressive, but I appreciate the compliment. But yeah, I think that everything continued on from high school, right? When I became interested in politics back then. I oriented my college application essays around studying political science, and then I guess that when I got to campus at Berkeley, I didn't change my mind. I remember my first political science class. I think it was in the spring semester of my freshman year. It was Introduction to Comparative Politics, and I was astounded by how much reading there was, right? I was a bit daunted by it all. And the professor was like, "Oh, this is a moderate reading load." But I found that, it was something that I really enjoyed studying, and it just kept going on with it. And I really enjoyed how I could combine my interest for area studies. So like when you have a passion for a particular region, for example, Southeast Asia, and that was something that lended naturally to political science as well. And I took more political science courses. I took a bunch of classes on East Asia, on Southeast Asia. I went to a lot of events held by the Institute for East Asian Studies. I also did student government during this time, and it was interesting to kind of see that sort of mini simulation of political institutions and how they operate. And so I guess my passion just never went away.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if, the daunting reading load didn't scare you away, I think that's a pretty good sign that this is a good path. Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, on to the fourth question. Again, many students face pressure to pursue degrees in fields like STEM, which are often seen as more practical in terms of, career prospects. What made you confident in your choice to pursue the social sciences despite those expectations?
So I don't know if I'm truly still confident about this decision, right? But I think something that you realize when you enter a field like this in Thailand is that you don't have that many role models. There, especially like among your peers, there aren't that many people who are doing what you are doing exactly, and it is sometimes difficult to find people you can turn to for advice. But I think that I've kept going because I know that, there are very few things I would rather be doing than what I'm doing now. And I hope that by being one of the I guess one of the minority of people who are in social sciences, I hope that there's also more room, I hope, for me to contribute. And I would also argue that when there are so few people who are doing what you're doing, that does allow you to create a unique selling point of your own. So all of that has kept me going. That there's no guarantee, of course, in life of whether you'll succeed, but at least I can say I've tried.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason why I wanted to ask you this question was hoping that you'd talk about, you know, it being quite difficult when you don't have that many role models, and we've had this conversation before in the past. Yeah, I truly like echo what you said. Being in
Mhm.
the social sciences, it's hard to think about, what the future would be like because you don't have a lot of people who've done things in your field before that you can look up to. Like even just looking at the Thai Student Association at Berkeley, the TISA we were a part of, we didn't have a lot of upperclassmen in the political sciences or the social sciences field, right? Like I didn't have, maybe I had one upperclassman that was in psychology,
Yeah,
but it was hard,
barely. Mhm.
you know, figure out like, okay, what are the clear steps into securing a job in this field or
Yeah.
um so yeah, thank you so much for that insight. On to the last question. Again, so looking back now, how do you feel about your choice to study political science has shaped your perspective on the world?
Tough question, but a couple things I would mention. I think number one, when you study comparative politics in particular, studying a lot of different countries and comparing them, I think you come to understand that no country is truly unique, right? A lot of times, a lot of people say, "Oh, we're exceptional in this case or that case," but I don't think that exceptionality truly exists. I think that, in the end, we're all human, and I think that it's a useful approach when you try to study something scientifically, you know, trying to understand the shared humanity we have and how, in the end, uh, we are sort of like the same raw material, I would say. But at the same time, political science is not physics or even economics, right? There are very few laws. There are a couple of them you could debate, like, that where X happens and Y tends to happen. But in general, you get trends, but no real fixed laws. At the same time, though, the political choices that we make truly have a real effect on public policy, and it's incumbent on social scientists and political scientists to try to understand the effects of these choices, even if there's, high variability and you're never really sure what effect something's going to have. And I would probably conclude with the fact that the more of an expert you become, the less confident you are with making predictions. You understand there's so much uncertainty. Sometimes, I mean, I'm tempted, right, to go when I'm writing an article or when I'm going on television to try to make like these confident predictions. But in the end, there's so much you don't know about the world. There's so much that can change. And so I think that being humble comes with being a social scientist.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. You know, same thing goes with psychology, right? Like people think that, um, you know, as someone who studied psychology, you can predict like how this person with this personality will be like in 5 years, right? Like I totally echo what you just said. Social sciences, there are trends, but you can't really make any predictions because, in this field, you have to acknowledge that there are so many factors influencing whatever you're trying to investigate, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much, Ken, for the great insights. That's it for today's episode. Stay tuned for the next one where we'll hear Ken's opinions regarding the career path for social science students. Thank you so much, Ken.
See you later.